Good evening. I'm essentially from the Black Shoe Navy. I've never been to one of these Airedale functions, so maybe it's time I change my rate. Anyway, my name again is John Bastien, and I'm retired Senior Chief Hospital Corpsman. And I served in the Navy from 1955 until October. My retirement in October 1974. In 1966, I was first class hospital corpsman and stationed in Keflavik, Iceland. 1966 was also the year that LA-9, a P-2V from PT Squadron 5, was found on the ice cap in Greenland. Myself and Major Cole were members of the team that went to Greenland to recover the remains of the crewmen of LA. In a telephone conversation a number of months ago with Bob Petway, he told me about the reunion that was being held this year, and he asked me if I would come and say a few words, and I told him I would. As I can remember, and this is going back 38 years ago, so you'll have to take it for what it's worth, but about September 14th or 15th, there was a rumor going around the base at the naval station at Keflavik, Iceland, that a P-2V had been found on the Greenland ice cap. There's also a rumor going around that the command was going to be sending up a recovery mission to recover the remains and also to destroy the aircraft. On September 16th, I was called into the hospital administrator's office, and he told me that, yes, these rumors were in fact true, that P-2V with 12 crewmen had disappeared January of 1962, and that it had just been found by some explorers on the Greenland on the glacier in Greenland. He also said that the command was setting up a recovery mission to return the crewmen and destroy the aircraft. He said that the recovery team would be led by Captain Cole, then Captain Cole, from the Marine Barracks, along with 4 other Marines, 8 Icelandic Sea Land Rescue personnel, and 2 Navy personnel. The 2 Navy personnel included myself. I've been responsible for the tagging of the remains and placing of them in body bags. Jim Torgerson, who is now deceased, he was a chief shipfitter and also an explosive ordnance disposal specialist. He would be responsible for destroying the fuselage before we left the glacier. He said that the team would be transported from Iceland to Greenland by the USS Atka, which is a U.S. Navy icebreaker. He said that the Atka at that point in time was en route to Iceland to pick us up. He said that the Atka had 2 helicopters on board, and they would be used to transport us and our equipment to the crash site. On Monday, the 19th of September, they reported that the Atka was coming into Reykjavik Harbor. We departed Keflavik base that evening and reported aboard the Atka, which was anchored out in the Reykjavik Harbor at about 2200. We didn't get underway that night, but the next morning at 0550, we did get underway, and we steamed that entire day and night. At 0700 the following day, we arrived at Cape Raven area in Greenland, and this is located on the east coast of Greenland, just north of the Arctic Circle. And this all happened fairly quickly. At 0745, the ship sounded flight quarters, and essentially the recovery mission was then underway. The flight personnel, they readied the 2 ships' helicopters, which were 2 small, I'd never seen them before, 2 small Bell helicopters. There was a long discussion before they got them going, saying that because of the number of the personnel and the amount of equipment, they wanted to remove as much excess weight from the helicopter so they could put 3 persons in the helicopter at a time. Once they completed that, they started ferrying the personnel and the equipment to the crash site. The flight to the crash site, from my perspective, was very impressive. Again, I'm not an Airedale. I'd never seen an icebreaker or iceberg or a glacier. Anyway, we took off the flight of the Atka, and we flew at a low altitude over these huge icebergs. And then we headed right towards the coastline, which was the base of the glacier. The glacier appeared to be approximately 100 to 150 feet of sheer straight ice, a wall of ice. We approached the glacier, the face of the glacier, went over it, and we continued on to the crash site. When I got to the crash site, Captain Cole was there with other personnel, mainly the Icelandic Sea Land Rescue personnel, and they were drawing up a map of the area and the search site. Once that was done, the Icelanders took their cross-country skis and they probed the entire area, making sure that it was safe for the recovery team to start sorting debris. Again, you have to realize that there was probably about 2 to 3 feet of snow on the glacier at the time. We worked the rest of the day shoveling snow, searching debris, and recovering remains. As you know, as you most of you probably know, the remains found were mostly skeletal. And this was due because of the period of time that they were on the ice, and also the presence of the Arctic wild ice that was on the glacier. That night we camped overnight in tents, and the Atka provided us with hot food and whatever supplies we needed. The following morning, on the 22nd, we got up, had breakfast, and we continued shoveling and searching of the debris. And something that we had an unusual incident happen to us while we were up there. Shortly after lunch, sometime probably around 1300, we had been gathered by the wing of LA9 and the wheel struck, and we had a fire there. Well, as we finished our noon meal, we left that area. And I would say probably 20 minutes to a half hour later, there was this huge explosion. And what we understand happened is that the fire we had going there got the tire on fire. The tire on fire heated the magnesium wheel, and the two of them created sufficient heat to melt the snow which was on top of the wing and on the wheel strut. This all slid down and landed on top of the magnesium and created this huge explosion. Luckily, no one was injured. There were a few shattered nerves. Anyway, we continued to work the rest of that day. And at approximately 1500, we started breaking up camp. The Icelanders took their tents down, and we brought the remains, sent the remains back to the ship. And we also returned the personnel that wouldn't be needed there for destroying the aircraft. Approximately 5 o'clock that evening, 1700, with only myself, the ship's photographer, the ship had sent up a photographer and took many, many pictures of the recovery mission. And from what I understand, I had a few of them, but I think there's some somewhere that would be very interesting. But anyway, with only myself, the ship's photographer, and Chief Torgerson left on the glacier, Chief Torgerson planted and detonated the 2 charges so as to destroy the fuselage of LA9. We were then, shortly afterwards, picked up by the helicopters from Atka, and we went back aboard ship, and we landed on the ship. The ship's record states that we landed on there at 1814. And as quick as this mission was, at 1844, we were once again underway for Reykjavik, Iceland. We steamed that night, the following day, and we arrived back in Reykjavik at about 1930 on the 23rd of September. Essentially, the recovery mission for us was over. However, the remains were taken from the Atka and brought back to Keflavik base, and they were then shipped to the United States for positive identification and funeral services, burial services. I want to say that it was truly an honor for us, myself and Major Cole, and the rest of the recovery team, to be a part of that mission. We also want to thank Bob Petway for contacting us and also for inviting us to this reunion tonight. As you know, you still have 2 crewmen up there waiting for their ride home. Let's hope the Navy provides them with that ticket in the very near future. Again, the ice is melting, or the ice is melting and moving, and time is running out. That's all I have. I don't know if Major Cole